crazy. The rivalry now between Philly and Houston for the World Series tonight. And then we also got Thursday night football with the Eagles heading down to Houston to take on the Texans tonight. So let's start to break it down. The Eagles attempt to remain undefeated in Houston. Right now, they're 7-0 on the season, and realistically, they could go 10-0 with their next 3 weeks that they have right now. Last week, they took care of business against the Steelers. A.J. Brown, Jalen Hurts, incredible chemistry, 156 yards, 3 touchdowns on 6 catches for A.J. Brown. Texans could not stop a nose to save their life. They allowed 300 yards on the ground. This game is going to be really interesting because the Eagles are a team that have been exceptionally solid in the first half of games. And the second half, they kind of trickle off a little bit. Zeno, you are taking the Texans plus 14 in this spot. I know we'll get into your best bet of the day in a little bit, but just your overall thoughts on this game, because truly on paper, it looks like a huge mismatch.
Too many points. Too many points. I mean, especially when you get to a key number of 14. Dogs are 57% this season. Dogs that failed to cover the week before are hitting at 61% of this season. And dogs of 7 or more are 63% against the number this year. I'll just play the percentages here. I'm not going to try to find a reason why the Texans are have a shot to win this thing. But this is the NFL, and stranger things have happened on a short week with a team going on the road after sort of a, I don't want to call it like a letdown spot per se, but, the Eagles haven't really been challenged by anybody. So there are no real look-ahead spots for the Eagles in any size, way, shape, or form. But, again, they do get a divisional opponent next week at home. So I'll take the points, all 14 of them.
Yeah, it is really interesting. Their next week, they have the Commanders. The week after that, they have the Colts. Realistically, they could start the season 10-0. I think they're obviously going to win this game, but 14 points for an entire game is a lot of points, Jared. How do you feel about the Eagles heading down to Houston and just the mismatch of talent, but also the numbers that Zeno just told us?
I can find a trend that says it's not a lot of points. And our friend Clev TA did just that in the write-up this morning. So, yes, double-digit favorites on any day of the week besides Thursday over the last 2 decades aren't covering more than they're not covering. The underdogs are the right side there. But double-digit favorites on Thursday night in that stretch are 19-7 against the spread. And it makes sense if you kind of think of the narrative there where a double-digit favorite, especially a road double-digit favorite, the talent gap there is immense. It's huge in the NFL. You don't see them very often. But when they happen, it's pretty obvious that there is a huge gap in talent there. So the short week, you would think, favors the team that's way more talented and can just line it up and play and don't have to worry about scheme or outsmarting or rest or any of that. They're just so much more talented than the other team, then they can just line up and play football. And I think that's what we're going to get tonight, because I think the running game is the key. And the running game travels. It's just, here's the ball, go run. And that's what the Texans really struggle with, and that's what the Eagles excel at. So that's kind of the angle that I have tonight, and I'm trying not to overthink it. I usually don't bet with the public, so it actually is kind of feels a little dirty. But I can find plenty of trends that say that it's not too many points, and it's just a mismatch.
The favorite is 4-0 against the spread in these teams' last 4 meetings. The over is 4-1 in the last 5 meetings. And the injuries, notable injuries to talk about, Eagles coach Nick Sirianni said it's unlikely that Jordan Davis with his ankle will travel with the team for Thursday night's game against the Texans. So I don't think he was on the road. I don't think he's in Houston right now. But we're going to break down that game. I think all 3 of us are on this Thursday night football game for our best bet of the day. We're all in kind of different rhythms looking at it, but we'll break that down a little bit more towards the end of the game. We also have Bobby Stanley coming on in a little bit to talk some props for Thursday night football. Let's get into some futures would you rather bets. Okay, Chiefs to win the AFC at plus 270, Zeno, or 49ers to win the NFC at 5-1 right now. Would you rather take the Chiefs to win the AFC or the Niners to win the NFC?
49ers. Defense wins. Defense travels. They have the best defense in the league. That's what I would back, especially at a better price.
Yeah, what did you like about Christian McCaffrey this past week coming in and looking like he's like been on the team for a while now and he only really needed another week of practice?
No, he just needed the coach of all coaches for scheming for a player like him and Kyle Shanahan. That's the difference. I mean, the extra week obviously helped for him to understand the system, and they probably limited him to a certain number of plays in his first week because he had 48 hours to get ready for a football game. But beyond that, you'll start to see that every week from him. He's going to be exploited. If you're a fantasy football nerd and you have CMC on your roster, you're smiling from ear to ear at this point.
Yeah, and you get him at a better value too, 5-1. Who would you rather take, the Chiefs to win the AFC or the Niners to win the NFC?
Way less competition in the NFC. So, the Chiefs have to deal with the big boy in the room, the elephant, the Buffalo Bills. And I think the Ravens pose a challenge as well. I forget who won that game last year, Chiefs Ravens. I think the Ravens actually did win it. So they've had some pretty good success against the Chiefs before. So I agree with Mark. I think the Niners defense is elite. I think there's a lot of room to the upside because of all of their injuries that they've had, especially in the secondary. I mean, their secondary has just been destroyed with injuries. So
Yeah.
you would hope they get a little healthier there down the stretch. And we'll see if we see, a little more explosion out of Christian McCaffrey. He's been, I don't want to say limited, but in his first 2 weeks, I'm assuming he's done about as much as he can. I mean, he threw a freaking touchdown pass, for crying out loud. I want to see more of the pony package, which is Wilson and McCaffrey both on the field together. It does feel like this is a shiny new Christmas morning toy for Kyle Shanahan to play with. And you would think he's going to continue to come up with fun ways to get that guy the ball in space with other guys around him. And oh, by the way, Deebo Samuel didn't even play last week. Imagine Deebo, Wilson, and McCaffrey, a snap or a package of the three of them in the backfield together, and they do this weird thing. I don't know. I feel like Kyle Shanahan's going to have a lot of fun coming up with ways to get that guy the ball in space with all the other weapons the Niners have. So I've been on the Niners to win the division for the last month or so, and I don't see why they can't make a run to win this conference.
They absolutely have the talent. Let's take it from macro to micro. Bengals to win the AFC North, Zeno, at 3.5-1, basically plus 360. Or Seahawks to win the NFC West at plus 305. The Bengals right now sitting at 4-4, right behind the Ravens, who are at 5-3. And then you look at the Seahawks; they're at the top of the division right now at 5-3, which Pete Carroll and none of us thought was going to be the case at the beginning of the season.
I mean, I'd probably take the Bengals. Seattle at some point is going to get exposed. I don't know that they are still all that good. But, again, with the Bengals missing Jamar Chase for another couple of weeks, if they don't win, just don't start stockpiling wins, regardless of whether they cover spreads or not. They may be on the outside looking in. I've always felt the Bengals are primed for some regression this year. But nobody else in that division, neither the Ravens nor the Browns, because they can't with Jacoby Brissett, but nobody's really taken a stronghold of it yet. So I'd probably take the Bengals.
Yeah, Jared, how do you feel about this one? Did the Bengals finally put together 4 full quarters? I know they've done it maybe once or twice so far this season. The other wins, they kind of snuck out. But do we see that team kind of gelling together under Joe Burrow and see them put together 4 full quarters for weeks on end?
Yeah, both of these aren't great options, to be perfectly honest with you, because I do agree. I think that as much as we love what Geno's doing and this Seattle team way above expectation, I don't think they're as good as the Niners. And I think then, first of all, the Niners already have a win over them. And they get to play them again later in the year when you, again, think, what did we just talk about with San Francisco? You would hope that they get a little healthier defensively, and they already beat them without Christian McCaffrey. So I would assume that they're going to be a pretty big favorite in that game again. I don't know when it is later in the year, but I think San Francisco is going to win the West. So then can the Bengals overtake the Ravens to win the North? I don't think so. I think the Awuzie injury is freaking huge, and they can't block a lick. So I don't really know if I can choose a door number 3 here, but I don't think either of these are going to happen, frankly.
So Jared's passing Zeno's, if he had to lean, taking the Bengals to win the AFC North. I like the Bengals at this point too. I actually really love the Seahawks, but I don't think there's any way that they're going to get past the 49ers. I think the 49ers are going to figure it out and kind of make a push towards these last 8 weeks of the regular season. It's going to be interesting to see what happens. Zeno, I'm sorry that we have to take your beautiful face off of this screen, but we're going to do it for one segment.
It's like around the
we got to
horn.
replace you with
Kinda
Bobby
reminds me of Around
Stanley,
the
Prop Holiday, but we're bringing you back in for college football because there's a lot of really good CFB games going on. But right now, let's bring in Prop Holiday, take it to the men. Thursday night football, the Eagles headed to Houston. 14-point spread in this game. That total is set at 45. Bobby Stanley, how are you? Happy Thursday.
I can't replace that chiseled man. Why would you guys do this?
Did the show get better looking or worse looking? That's the question.
I'm fading myself on this one, but no, thank you guys for bringing me in. An exciting Thursday night 14-point home underdog game. Second Philadelphia, the second Philadelphia Houston game in the market.
Yeah, I know. Honestly, these storylines can't even write themselves. Like, you have Houston and Philly taking each other on in the World Series. Then you have them playing in NFL as well. Thank goodness they are not both in the same city, because I feel like either Houston would burn to the ground or Philly would burn to the ground, depending on which city that would be in. And if both games were in Philly, they share the same parking lot. There's no way, like, logistically, that could have worked, right?
No, and then they have Xfinity over there, which
they would have figured it out.
It would be a night. But from what I understand, I was reading a bunch of Houston Texans like message boards this week. I was capping the game. If you want 50-yard, if you ever wanted 50-yard line tickets to a Texans game, tonight's the night to do it, because apparently no one's going to be.
What message boards do you read? Are you on Reddit?
I'm on Football's Future.
He's in a group chat.
Football's Future, and honestly, for handicapping, it helps because these like fans.
No, it does. I'm in a few of them as well. I'm curious if we're in the same ones.
I'm on Football's Future, but
that's not the one I'm on.
Okay,
I'll send you the one I'm on later.
Okay, yeah, it helps.
I like
it. Really does
it.
help.
I don't want to give it away to our audience, because then they get all the secrets that we like to bring to the show, and then why the hell would they watch the show?
I dig it.
Bobby Stanley and Jared Smith, men of the people, just in the group chats with everybody chit-chatting away. Let's get into some of your caps for tonight's game. I know you have two really good props. First of all, Damian Pierce. Tell me more.
All right, Damian Pierce, over 86.5 rushing plus receiving yards. And it feels like they built the blowout into this line, but I don't think they look too closely exactly on who the opponent is. So he hit this in 5 of 7 games this year, which is awesome just from a handicapping perspective on player props. But there's no Jordan Davis. He got put on the IR, and Pierce loves to run between the tackles. 58% of his rushing yards came after contact this season, and he leads the league in broken tackles. Why does that matter? Because the Eagles rank 31st overall in tackling according to PFF. He also breaks a tackle every 7.6 attempts, which is the best in the NFL. So why add the receiving yards, right? Because if this game does get out of hand, I want the running back dump off as a buffer during garbage time. He has 20 receptions for 98 yards in the season, so he has been active in the passing game. But I think Damian Pierce is going to be the only redeeming quality of this offense tonight.
Yeah, and you would think the Eagles know that too. That's the one thing that scares me. Dallas Goedert, listen, I'm a little disappointed, Bobby. You don't have this like random guy that I've never heard of scoring a touchdown tonight, but you do have Dallas Goedert, who I have heard of. Talk to me about his receiving yards, bro.
I can start digging if you want, but no, I'll talk about
I love when you bring those guys to the show, because when they hit, you look like a friggin' genius.
So I'll get back to that later. Dallas Goedert over 46.5 receiving yards. He hit this in 5 of 7 games this season. The 2 that he didn't were the last 2 games. They were against Dallas and Pittsburgh. Both of those teams are top 10 in tackling. Both of those teams are top 10 in receiving yards to opposing tight ends. So they defend the tight end position very well. The Texans, on the other hand, 29th overall in tackling, 25th overall in yards per reception to tight ends. They haven't played many top-tier tight ends this season, but they gave up big games to Gerald Everett and Evan Ingram. Goddard, 5th overall amongst tight ends in yards after contact, so it plays into the poor tackling of Houston. 5 straight games this season, Goddard had a reception of 23 yards or longer. It got broken with the Steelers and the Cowboys. I think all of that comes back tonight against the Texans. It's a great opponent. So him going over 46.5 receiving, if you're looking for another angle, his longest reception over 19.5 yards is also a good play.
If you're looking at the spread of this game.
So you would think Dallas Goedert would play well in Texas, right? That seems right.
It's very heavy in my handicapping geographically. So
exactly.
You look at the Eagles.
I apologize for that.
Oh no, you're okay. I was just gonna say, you look at the Eagles' upcoming schedule. 14 points is a lot of points to be laying, especially a full game, and especially with the way that the Eagles have played in the second half, because they get up to such a good lead in the first half, and then I think they've only scored like 47 total points in the second half through 8 or 9 weeks so far this season. Do you think, one, the Eagles start the season 10-0 because you look at their schedule, they have the Commanders and the Colts coming up next, and two, do they cover the full game spread here? Or can you kind of see the Texans having a backdoor cover?
Yes, I think they start 10-0. The backdoor cover, I think the Texans 14 points at home, even though it's really not going to be much of a home field advantage tonight. I just think it's too many points. And this Texans team, yes, they're not good. They're bottom of the barrel. It is a Thursday night short week. Something just tells me everyone's going to be all over the Eagles, blowing this out of the water. I think it's going to be a little bit more competitive, especially if Pierce does get going, and they can control the clock a little bit more to prevent Philly from jumping off to a big lead. So I would take the 14 with Houston, and I do think they start 10-0.
I love how you said the word water, too. Can you say that again? Water.
Water? Oh, God. You want me to say hot dog and coffee, too? It's a Jersey. You were at MSG last night, Lord.
You want out of the worder.
Yeah, LJ, you should be all about it. Stop at the Dirty Water hot dog stand.
I love
hopefully
it.
Hopefully, he did not go anywhere near outside Madison Square Garden last night.
Oh my gosh, I loved Madison Square Garden yesterday, you guys. It's actually so funny, and we're gonna bring Zeno back in a second. But I've been there like 6 times with the teams I've worked with between the Hawks and the Colorado Avalanche. Every single game I've been there with the team, it's been a national game. That was the first game I actually worked sideline at MSG. It was so stinking cool. I just have to say, it was so stinking cool.
Inside the Garden, great. As long as you didn't walk outside and go down Broadway or anything, then you're A-okay.
Crazies?
No,
crazies
I walked down that ramp down the
7th
bus,
Ave.
and it drove us right to the airport post-game. So I didn't have to experience any of the crowds or anything there. So, yeah. Bobby Stanley, we so appreciate you. Go enjoy a glass of water today. Tell your baby we say hi. And good luck with your bets tonight.
Thank you, guys. Best of luck. Take care. Have a good one.
Great job,
Thank you. I'll
Bobo.
talk to you on Sunday. Let's bring out the beauty in Bobby and bring in another beauty with a chiseled jawline in Mark Zeno. Zeno, we missed you. Oh my gosh, it's been so long. How are you?
No, you didn't. You didn't miss my anti-no-hitter takes and really annoying, his personality.
I mean, a little bit. Just a little bit. Just a hair. Just a little bit.
You and Bobby Stanley on the same page, though, with the Texans and taking the points. So I love it. I absolutely love it. Okay, let's get into some college football because you are our lead college football analyst. TCU getting snubbed a little bit in the rankings, where Alabama slotted one spot above them in the rankings. TCU now 8-0. There's a lot of really big games heading into this week and then in the following couple of weeks. But first of all, the rankings finished out: Tennessee number 1, Ohio State 2, Georgia 3, Clemson 4, Michigan 5, Alabama, who is 7-1 at 6, TCU, who is undefeated at 7, and then Oregon slotted in there at number 8 with the 7-1. Let's get into some Week 10 look-ahead games. First one of them being TCU taking on Texas Tech. This is a really important game for TCU because Alabama was slotted one spot ahead of them. The drama, and I live for it. I guess the committees, wasn't necessarily impressed with the close games that TCU has been playing. I feel like they really need to have a strong performance here this week against Texas Tech.
Yeah, the biggest objection I had to the college football playoff rankings was Clemson being 4th. In my opinion, Michigan, Alabama, TCU, and Oregon are all better than Clemson. And I don't really know what Clemson's signature win is this year. NC State? Like, is that what we're
Yeah,
qualifying as?
probably.
No, Wake,
to
I
win?
would say, is the only one that really holds any weight
Yeah,
to me.
a game where they had to go to overtime on the road and almost
Yeah,
lost. So I'm
I
not really
agree.
sure
It hasn't been pretty.
what
They gave
the
up 45
team
points in that game.
Yeah, what they saw in Clemson, that a TCU team that ran a gamut of 4 consecutive top 20 opponents, and just I don't know. I think the committee did a bad job with Clemson. I would have put them probably 6th and easily had either Alabama or Michigan ahead of them. But again, I think you make arguments for TCU and Oregon as well to be above them. That said, I'm looking for a spot where TCU is going to trip up, and it's not this week. Texas Tech is just not. This is not, if this game was in Lubbock, Texas, I would look at it differently. But I just don't trust Texas Tech at this point. They give up too many points. They don't have a defense that can stop anybody, and we keep waiting for this TCU offense to sort of slow down, and it's not happening at any point in time. Even the fact that they're chucking up touchdowns with 20 seconds left to kill the under and West Virginia backers last week. But all things considered,
Yeah.
God,
TCU,
that was so brutal.
it
Oh,
was
don't
terrible.
even remind me of that. Oh,
I wasn't
my
on
God,
either
was that
side, so
terrible.
I saw.
I
it
had
and
that
was-
in the contest, and I wanted to vomit everywhere. I don't even. I
Yeah.
can't believe I have to relive that moment. That was awful.
So, all that said, yeah, I probably would pick TCU to cover this week. This is just not a Red Raiders team that I think that can do anything.
And they're also storyline wise being probably a little fired up that they are not sitting above Alabama with an undefeated record at this point, and Alabama with a 1-loss record. They're probably a little bad taste in their mouth towards the committee as well. Zenny, you talked about Clemson, and Jared, I'll pose this question to you. Clemson playing Notre Dame this week. This is probably the last toughest game that they have, I guess, on their season. And the last time Clemson played in front of Touchdown Jesus, they were ranked number 1. It ended up as a loss. My brother was at that game. He was a senior. It was back in 2020. All of the Notre Dame students stormed the field. This year, they have a real shot to win the ACC and possibly get into the college football playoff. I don't know how all of this is going to work out because there's so many good teams this season. Notre Dame has been up and down all season, but has the size up front to slow down a Clemson run game. And they've also dropped 40-plus points on the ACC, 2 best teams in wins. So, Jared, how do you think this game is going to play out? Because Clemson's going to be hungry, but Notre Dame is also going to be pretty hungry in this spot too.
Yeah, the market tells me that there's respected money on both sides of this game. We saw it come down to about 3-ish earlier in the week, and then Brad Powers, who is arguably the most respected college football bettor out there right now, put out a tweet, and he's a Notre Dame alum. I think either alum or fan. I think alum. And he's fading the Irish and bet Clemson -3, and then that pushed the market back to 4.5, and we've kind of seen this push and pull in that 4 region. I full disclosure, I did bet Notre Dame +4, and I think my initial thought was if it gets back down to 3, I'll consider coming off of it because it's a low total game. Weather will be a factor here. And I have no issues with being on a +4 and a -3 and hoping for the game to land on one of those key numbers. And I don't lose. I win and don't lose. That's obviously the goal, right? But I could see you can make a strong case why Clemson's just going to overpower Notre Dame here. And that's because Drew Pine really he's just not it. And that's what scares me in this spot. Notre Dame's very limited at wide receiver. They're not an explosive team. They're very much, paint by numbers offense, hand the ball off 3 or 4 or 5 yards, set up 2nd, 3rd, and manageable, maybe get Michael Mayer involved in play action and hope that Drew Pine doesn't make the big mistake that costs them the game. The margin for error for Notre Dame is very thin here. That being said, Clemson off the bye after DJU's just brain fart 4 turnover performance against Syracuse. Where is his head at in this game? Because he's been sitting and stewing on that performance now for 2 weeks. Now, I could see it being very positive for him. He's rested, he's recharged, he comes out, plays well, but I could see him also losing confidence very quickly if he faces some early adversity. I respect both sides of the market on this game. I'm going to try really hard to get a Clemson -3 in my back pocket at some point before Saturday and play both sides here. But if I had to pick this game, I would lean to Notre Dame. because I think I trust the initial line move off of 4.5 down to 3. And then when Brad Powers and his crew moved it back to 4, that's where you started to see the push and pull start. So I kind of lean Notre Dame here, but I'm not fully confident because I don't trust Drew Pine.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how that game plays out. Clemson right now, let's take a look at the national championship odds at this point, because Clemson right now is sitting at 16-1. We have Tennessee at 10-1, Ohio State obviously the favorite, Georgia right behind them, and Alabama right behind them. And Zeno, speaking of Alabama, they're taking on LSU, and who would have thought LSU would be, ranked as high as they are heading into Week 10? Brian Kelly actually has a shot at the SEC West against Bama. And I know Alabama has so many great pieces, but Jaden Daniels has been really tough to stop for other teams over the last few weeks too. Do you think this is even a game, or do you think Alabama crushes here and continues to move up in the ranks?
Can I just make one more quick note on Clemson real quick
Yeah, of
before I get
course.
to this Alabama game? Prior to this season starting, Clemson was 12-1 to win the national title. Their odds are now at 16-1. What does that tell you? Whether they've gotten better or gotten worse? Now, you can make the argument everybody else got better around them, but still, the idea that Clemson, even though they're undefeated, hasn't increased their odds to win a national title, they've only fallen further away from winning it, should tell you all you need to know about how not good that Clemson team is. So just something for a frame of reference. Now, back to Alabama. Listen, we've seen a lot of square dogs this year, and I think LSU is one of them. I think LSU is overrated. I don't know that they are as good as people want to make them to be. This is an Alabama team right now with a chip on its shoulder, and I like it. Outside of Joe Burrow playing for Alabama, Lauren, you were in grammar school the last time LSU won a game against Alabama, okay? You were just little Lauren. You had a little
I was a wee low.
You had Dora the Explorer backpack, okay? So that's how long that Alabama has dominated this thing. And outside of Jaden Daniels, LSU doesn't really do much that's all that great. They have a bad run defense. Jahmyr Gibbs, who's averaging 7 yards a carry this season, should have a huge day. I could see this game playing out very similar to the way, Alabama gets an early lead and is forcing LSU to chase. And if that's the case, then I don't like that situation for Jaden Daniels because he's not an excellent passer. I know LSU's coming off big wins over Ole Miss, and they feel like they're starting to feel themselves. I just think they're overvalued right now. I think Alabama's going to pace this team. I think that Nick Saban, oh, by the way, twice has coached up against Brian Kelly and beat him soundly twice. So I don't know that I have a lot of faith here in Brian Kelly and LSU. I know it's a night game too, and that usually freaks people out about a night game in Death Valley, but it's nothing Alabama hasn't seen before.
Last but not least, and I want to get both of your take on this because we have the game of the week and maybe possibly the game of the century because Tennessee already played the game of the season against Alabama, but we have the Vols taking on the Bulldogs for basically all the chips at this point. Vols have the #1 total offense. Georgia is really good defensively and also has perimeter speed to throw at Tennessee's secondary. The winner of this game will win the East and go to Atlanta and then probably the college football playoff. This game has a ton riding on it at this point, Jared. How do you feel like it ends up?
Yeah, I think the line's pretty fair, to be honest with you. I mean, my numbers say like 7-ish, like 6.9. So I can't really fault, any one team side here. Market hasn't really moved a whole lot. I think you're waiting for the limits to expand later this week. And my guess is, if I had to guess, this gets down to 7.5 or maybe it touches 7. If/when it does, that's when I think the professional money will step in on Georgia, because I think right now it's been a lot of recreational money coming in on Tennessee. I think a lot of people are looking at that line and they see the #1 ranking next to Tennessee and they see underdog and they think, let's bet the dog here. So I'm assuming the liability the sports books will be taking on this week on the Volunteers is going to be massive, massive, massive. Perhaps the biggest result of the season in college football on Tennessee this week. So immediately my contrarian brain says, Georgia, find a reason to bet Georgia. But I don't think I want to get there at 8. I think at 7 I would consider it. I mean, you can make really good cases for both sides here. I mean, Georgia's defense, what are they? Tennessee's offense, we know what they are. I don't really know what Georgia is yet, to be perfectly honest with you. They haven't really overly impressed me. I kind of throw out that first game against Oregon. Oregon's looked so good since. That's not the same Oregon team. And since then, they've kind of just meandered their way through. Nothing really overly impressive. Tennessee's obviously got the win over Bama, but I can kind of talk my way into both sides here. I think at 7, I'll probably bet Georgia if it does get to that.
I think that Jared is right in a sense where, I think there's arguments for both sides in this thing, and he is right. 90% of the tickets are on Tennessee to this point. And the line hasn't moved, and that should tell you a lot that you're getting that sort of amount, and the line isn't moving in any direction. Now, all that said, I will contend, Jared, that, when you say there's nothing really special about Georgia, I mean, Tennessee has the top offense in the country. Georgia has a top 5 offense in the country. We seem to forget.
I agree.
This.
Georgia's offense is the hidden value in this game. They could really, they could absolutely put the pedal down here. I agree with that.
Yeah. And from that standpoint, it's the Oregon game you need to go back and watch, because that's the game script that best benefits Georgia. 12-play drive, 75 yards. 8-play drive, 92 yards. 6-play drive, 56 yards. 8-play drive, 75 yards. That's what their drives were against Oregon in week 1 that all resulted in touchdowns. The Kirby Smart death march will absolutely take Tennessee out of their rhythm, and it's probably the easiest way for Georgia to win this game. And I still can't figure out how a pass defense that's one of the worst in the country is going to defend Brock Bowers and Darnell Washington, the Georgia tight ends, because they're mismatches for good pass defenses, let alone bad pass defenses. I mean, and the crazy thing is that both of these teams score over 40 points a game. They're top 5 in scoring offense in the nation, yet Georgia is top 5 in time of possession. Tennessee is bottom 5 in time of possession. So you figure it out.
The one thing I will say about Georgia's offense that I'll make the final point on Georgia's offense, I really like Todd Monken a lot. I think he is a very good coach, and I think he is able to disguise things very well. And if you go back and watch that Florida-Tennessee game, let's be honest, Florida's offense isn't even close to where Georgia's offense is in terms of the efficiency. But Florida was able to score a ton of points in that game because they did a lot of window dressing, motion, play action. They disguise things very well, which is what I think Todd Monken does. And I think that's going to open up some wide open, like you're going to see some play action, motion, jet sweeps, and guys are just going to be wide open for Georgia. And I agree, Mark. I do think Georgia's offense is the one unit here that we're probably not talking about enough, because the headliner is Tennessee's offense against Georgia's defense, strength on strength.
And the one issue with Georgia's defense, too, is their linebacker, Nolan Smith, is out for the rest of the season with a torn pec. So that is a really big injury for Georgia's secondary. So we'll see if Tennessee can take advantage, or we'll see if this is a shootout. We'll see if it's a defensive battle. I don't even know what to expect at this point, but it's going to be so much fun to watch. And Zeno, I'll be on the show with you on Saturday. So we'll be breaking down college football all Saturday morning. Let's Bet It, presented by Superbook Sports. Make sure to go to superbook.com or download the app today. And this season, we are all rooting for safeties. That is because Superbook is going to give you a $50 bonus on each safety scored this season. Just place a $100 pregame bet on any spread or any total, and if there's a safety scored in any game on Sunday, you, my friend, get a $50 bonus. Make sure to visit superbook.com for terms and conditions. From superbook.com to pickswise.com. Zeno, I'll come to you. Who do you got on Pickswise.com website? 3-star play of the day.
Oh, look at that. Well, our good buddy Clev TA is on the opposite side of me, but on the pro side of Jared. So Jared's got that in his back pocket. As well, we got a lot of basketball picks up there, a couple of hockey plays as well. So go to Pickswise.com, check out all the 3-star plays and all of the college football best bets for the weekend as well.
Check out Pickswise.com. Okay, our best bets of the day. Gerard, I'll let you go first with yours.
Yeah, Club TA, anytime he puts a 3-star on the site, sometimes he just writes up the Monday night or the Thursday night games and he just gives us an angle. But he gave us the 3-star on Monday with the Browns plus 3.5. I mean, we all know how that turned out. And he's been doing a fantastic job writing these games up for the site this year. So he puts a 3-star on the site. And not only that, when I looked at the market last night, when I pulled up Pickswise, I got a better number. It was 13.5 over at the Superbook. So I feel very good about this bet. And again, there are trends that certainly back up the fact that big favorites have struggled this year. But Thursday night, double-digit favorites, 73% since 2000, 19-7 against the number, covering by an average of 4 points. And let's narrow the sample a little more to include games with relatively higher totals above that key number of 44. 11-0 against the spread. And again, that fits the narrative in my eyes, which is when you have a high total game and a big spread, it's a team with a massive talent gap. And in this case, Philly, obviously, huge talent gap over Houston. And the short week, I think it makes sense to favor the team that's massively more talented. They can just line up and just beat you one-on-one, man-to-man. Then you look at some of the matchups here, and it's strength on weakness. Eagles rushing offense, second in EPA per play. Texans rushing defense, 28th in EPA, 32nd in explosive runs allowed, 31st yards before first contact. They really struggle stopping the run. And I think that's where Jalen Hurts in this offense is really going to excel tonight. And then you've got some narratives to sprinkle in. It's the Jalen Hurts homecoming game. I love that angle. And then, of course, Brandon Cooks, they're arguably, besides Dameon Pierce, the best offensive weapon for the Texans. He's got his, foot half out the door. He's questionable to play. He's disgruntled, et cetera, et cetera. So everything I see tonight, and I hate doing it because it's a very public play, but everything I see tonight stacks up with the Eagles, and we get a good number, and Clef TA's on it. So I feel like stars are aligned. I'll be the public lamb, go to slaughter, and I'll lay it with the Eagles.
And Zeno, I'll come to you because you're on the opposite side. Then I'm splitting the difference between both of you guys. I'm like the mediator here for the best bet of the day.
Not really. You're rooting for the Eagles. Come on. Don't get out of here.
In the first half. We'll get there.
For me, this is just too many points. And the Texans match up with several, betting trends this year that are in the underdog's favor. Dogs are covering at 57%. Dogs that failed to cover the previous week before hitting at 61%. Underdogs of 7 or more are 63% this year. Plus, dogs who missed the playoffs the previous season are covering at 59%. Primetime dogs at 58%. And there is a discrepancy in the money versus the bets, whereas Jared talked about the public being on this thing. 75% of the tickets are on the Philadelphia Eagles. However, just 50% of the money. So when you see that sort of discrepancy, you always follow it. At least I do. Jared talked a little bit about the total and the idea that it could go over. Some sharp money is hitting the over. However, still, primetime unders have been a very smart bet, going 16-9. That's 66% to the under this year. So I'll follow the systems that are in place and take the dog with the points in a year where dogs have just sort of reamed. I'm not going to be upset if I'm on the wrong side of this one. Eagles are the better team. Don't have any surprise about it. This game, to me, will be decided in the first quarter. If the Eagles sprint out to a 14-0 lead, Texans aren't getting back in this thing. So if the Texans can hang around for a quarter or a half, I feel really good about them hanging around for a full game.
Who let the dogs out? Who? I'm hoping the dogs are at least leashed until the end of the first half because I'm taking the Eagles first half spread. They're laying 7 points here. I got it at -130, so they're laying 30 cents for it. And I've said this earlier in the season, Jared. Remember when I was talking about how good the Eagles are, especially in the second quarter? Well,
Yeah.
The first half in general, they've been phenomenal. They've scored 147 of their total 196 points in the first half through 7 games this season. They're the best first half team in the National Football League. They've only scored 49 points in second halves all season, which isn't necessarily great. And that can be tough. I was looking at the full 2 touchdowns that they're laying, and I'm like, I don't know if I can risk it for that. But when they're dominating in first halves, I'm like, what the heck? And it's only a touchdown here. The Eagles have not trailed in the second half of any game so far this season. They're averaging 21 first half points per game, and Houston's only averaging 8 first half points per game. Also last week, the Texans couldn't stop anything. They couldn't even stop a nosebleed. They allowed 302 rushing yards to the Titans. And with the way the Eagles offense has been playing, I really do think they're going to be able to take advantage. The connection between A.J. Brown and Jalen Hurts, one of the best quarterback receiver connections in the league this year. And the run game is top 5 in most, rushing metrics if you look them up. Eagles 7-0 straight up through the first 8 weeks, but they're also 7-0 against the spread in the first half through the first 8 weeks of the season. So I like the Eagles laying 7 points, not risking too much money for it, -130. Lock it up, baby. Keep the dogs locked up at least until the end of the first half. If Jared wants to win the full game, if Zeno wants to win, let the dogs out early. Let them bark, let them run. We'll see what happens, guys. But it's so much fun doing the show with both of you. I got lucky this morning. Yeah, everyone.
We got
best of luck with
lucky.
your bets tonight.
We're really the lucky ones here. Come on.
Oh, thanks, guys. That's it for us today. Find us on the Pickswise YouTube channel. Go to pickswise.com. Follow us on Twitter. Mark Zinno, Jared Smith, Lauren Jabara. We'll see you guys tomorrow. Let's get it. Let's bet it.